Hello everyone, welcome to Vox Nova English.
Imagine a world without cities, roads, schools, or technology. There were no books, no cars, no phones, and no electricity. The earth was covered with endless forests, vast grasslands, towering mountains, and powerful rivers. Wild animals ruled the land, and every sunrise brought a new challenge. More than 300,000 years ago, the first modern humans appeared in Africa. Their lives were simple, but survival was never easy. They lived in small groups, moving from place to place in search of food and clean water. They hunted wild animals with stone-tipped spears and gathered fruits, berries, nuts, and roots from the forests. Among these early humans was a young boy named Aaron. Aaron lived with his parents, grandparents, and nearly 30 other people. They had no permanent homes. Instead, they built temporary shelters from branches, leaves, and animal skins. Whenever food became scarce, they packed everything they owned and began another journey. Every morning, before the sun rose above the hills, Aaron watched his father prepare for hunting. One day, his father said with a smile, "You will carry your own spear." Aaron smiled proudly. One cool morning, he was finally allowed to join the hunters. The group walked quietly through the tall grass. Every sound mattered. Birds flying suddenly could mean danger. Broken branches could reveal the path of an animal. After several hours, the hunters discovered fresh footprints. "Deer," whispered the leader. Everyone slowly followed the tracks. Suddenly, the leader raised his hand. Everyone froze. Only a few meters away, a huge lion lay sleeping beneath a tree. The hunters held their breath. The lion was larger than any man. Its powerful paws could kill with one strike. Very slowly, they walked around the sleeping animal without making a sound. Only after they reached a safe distance did everyone breathe again. That evening, Aaron sat beside the campfire. "I thought we would die," he admitted. His grandfather smiled gently. "We are not the strongest animals. We are not the fastest. We are not the biggest. So why do we survive?" Aaron asked. His grandfather pointed toward the hunters. "Because we think. We work together. And we never stop learning." Those words stayed with Aaron for the rest of his life. Months passed. The seasons changed. One afternoon, dark clouds covered the sky. Thunder shook the mountains. Rain poured from the heavens. Then, with a blinding flash, lightning struck an enormous tree. The tree burst into flames. Everyone screamed and ran. The children hid behind their mothers. The adults watched from a distance. The fire burned through the night. When the rain stopped, the flames continued dancing. Curious but careful, the tribe slowly approached. They immediately felt something they had never experienced before. Warmth. The cold night suddenly felt comfortable. Wild animals stayed away from the bright flames. The darkness disappeared. For the first time, humans had control over light. The tribe carefully carried burning branches back to their camp. They protected the fire every day. Soon they discovered amazing things. Cooked meat tasted better. It was softer and easier to eat. Fire frightened dangerous animals. It kept babies warm during cold nights. Wooden spears became stronger after being hardened in fire. Life slowly became easier. The discovery of fire changed humanity forever. Years passed. Aaron became one of the tribe's best hunters. He learned to understand the wind. He could recognize animal footprints. He knew which plants healed sickness and which ones were poisonous. Knowledge became the tribe's greatest treasure. One spring morning, while walking near an old campsite, Aaron noticed something unusual. Tiny green plants were growing from the ground. He remembered dropping seeds there months earlier while eating. He knelt beside the plants. An idea filled his mind. What if food can grow where we plant it? He rushed back to the camp. The elders listened carefully. Some laughed. Others became curious. Finally, they decided to try. The tribe planted seeds beside a nearby river. Every day they watered the ground. Weeks passed. Nothing happened. Some people lost hope. Then one morning, small green leaves appeared. Soon golden grain covered the fields. The tribe celebrated with songs and dancing. For the first time in history, they did not have to search endlessly for food. They could grow it themselves. This discovery changed everything. Families stayed in one place longer. Children grew up without constantly moving. People built stronger homes from mud, wood, and stone. Dogs became trusted companions. Goats and sheep were raised instead of hunted. Small villages began appearing near rivers across Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Life became safer. Food became more reliable. The population slowly increased. As villages grew larger, people developed new skills. Some became farmers. Others became hunters. Some learned to make pottery. Others built houses. People no longer had to do every job themselves. They began working together in new ways. Trade soon followed. One family exchanged grain for pottery. Another traded animal skins for tools. Communities became stronger through cooperation. The world was changing faster than ever before. Historians would later call this transformation the agricultural revolution. It became one of the greatest turning points in human history. Without farming, there would be no villages. Without villages, there would be no cities. Without cities, there would be no kingdoms, no empires, and no modern civilization. One evening, many years later, an old Aaron sat beside the same fire that had once amazed him as a child. His grandson asked quietly, "Grandfather, what was the world like before our village?" Aaron smiled as he watched the stars above. "It was beautiful," he said. "But it was also dangerous. We never knew where tomorrow's food would come from. We walked every day. We feared every night." The boy looked around at the peaceful village. "So how did we build all this?" Aaron placed another piece of wood onto the fire. One idea. One discovery. One brave person at a time. The fire crackled softly beneath the endless sky. Neither Aaron nor his grandson knew what the future would bring. One day, people would build magnificent pyramids that touched the heavens. They would invent writing. Kings would rule. Empires would conquer. Scientists would change the world. Humans would cross oceans, fly through the clouds, and even walk on the moon. But every great achievement in history began with something simple. A small group of humans sitting together around a fire, sharing stories, dreams, and hope for a better tomorrow. The rise of great civilizations. Thousands of years passed. The small farming villages became larger and stronger. Families no longer moved from place to place. They built permanent homes using mud, stone, and wood. Children were born in the same villages where their parents and grandparents had lived. For the first time in history, people truly felt that they belonged to one place. As villages grew, new challenges appeared. More people meant more mouths to feed. Farmers needed better ways to grow crops. Families needed clean water throughout the year. Communities needed rules to keep peace. Slowly, leaders began to emerge. Some leaders were chosen because they were wise. Others became leaders because they were brave warriors. They organized the people, settled arguments, and protected their villages from danger. The greatest villages were built near rivers. Rivers were the lifeblood of civilization. They provided drinking water, rich soil for farming, fish for food, and easy transportation. One of the most important rivers in the world was the Nile River. Flowing through the deserts of Africa, the Nile brought life wherever it went. Every year, the river overflowed its banks. At first, people feared the floods. They thought the river was angry. But after the water disappeared, they noticed something remarkable. The flood left behind rich, black soil that produced excellent crops. Soon, villages along the Nile became prosperous. These villages united under one powerful ruler. This land became known as ancient Egypt. In Egypt lived a young farmer named Khepri. Every morning before sunrise, he walked to the fields with his family. The cool breeze carried the smell of fresh earth. His wife planted wheat. His children carried water from the canals. His father looked after the cattle. Every member of the family worked together. One afternoon, while resting beneath a palm tree, Khepri asked his father, "Father, why do we give so much grain to the pharaoh?" The old man smiled. "Because the pharaoh builds the canals." He pointed toward a long water channel stretching across the fields. "Without these canals, our crops would die during the dry season. The pharaoh gathers food from every family. He stores it for years when the harvest is poor. He protects us." Khepri nodded. He finally understood that great civilizations depended on cooperation. As Egypt became wealthier, its cities grew larger. Merchants traveled along the Nile carrying gold, ivory, grain, cloth, and beautiful pottery. Busy markets appeared. Blacksmiths made stronger tools. Artists painted colorful walls inside temples. Doctors learned to treat wounds and broken bones. Engineers designed enormous buildings. Then one day, the pharaoh announced a project unlike anything the world had ever seen. "I will build a monument that will last forever." Thousands of workers gathered in the desert. Massive blocks of limestone arrived from distant quarries. Each stone weighed several tons. Many people wondered how humans could possibly move such enormous rocks. The workers invented clever methods. They placed the stones on wooden sleds. Others poured water onto the sand to reduce friction. Hundreds of workers pulled together using thick ropes. It was slow. It was difficult. But every single day, the pyramid grew taller. Finally, the giant pyramid stood proudly against the blue Egyptian sky. People from distant lands came to admire it. Many believed it was impossible. Yet it stood as proof that human determination could overcome even the greatest challenges. Thousands of years later, the pyramids still remind us of the greatness of ancient Egypt. While Egypt flourished beside the Nile, another civilization was rising far to the east. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers lay a fertile land called Mesopotamia. Unlike Egypt, Mesopotamia was made up of many independent cities. Each city had its own king, its own army, its own laws. Sometimes these cities traded peacefully. Sometimes they fought bitter wars. A young merchant named Naram traveled between these cities. His donkey carried grain, copper tools, colorful cloth, and pottery. Every journey was dangerous. Bandits waited along lonely roads. Wild wolves hunted at night. Sandstorms could appear without warning. Still, trade continued because it connected people from different lands. One busy afternoon, Naram arrived at a crowded marketplace. The streets were filled with noise. People called out to customers. Children laughed as they chased each other between market stalls. Travelers from distant countries exchanged stories about lands beyond the horizon. Civilization was becoming connected. As trade increased, people faced a new problem. There were too many goods to remember. How many sheep had been sold? How much grain belonged to each farmer? Who still owed money? Memory alone was no longer enough. One wise man named Enki found a solution. He pressed a sharpened reed into soft clay. Each mark represented something. A number. A sheep. A bag of grain. A person's name. People watched with amazement. For the first time in history, information could be recorded permanently. This invention became known as writing. Writing transformed the world forever. Kings wrote laws. Merchants recorded business deals. Priests preserved religious teachings. Teachers shared knowledge. Historians recorded important events. Stories no longer disappeared when their storytellers died. Writing allowed ideas to travel across generations. Without writing, there would be no books. No libraries. No schools. No science. No history. One of the greatest inventions in human history began with simple marks pressed into wet clay. Meanwhile, far to the east, another great civilization was growing along the Indus River. Here, people built carefully planned cities with straight streets and strong brick houses. Many homes had wells for fresh water. Some even had underground drainage systems. Cleanliness became an important part of daily life. People traded with distant lands and developed skilled craftsmanship. Beautiful jewelry, pottery, and carved seals became famous throughout the ancient world. Even today, archaeologists continue to discover the remarkable achievements of the Indus Valley civilization. Farther east, another powerful civilization was taking shape beside the Yellow River. This was ancient China. Chinese farmers learned to grow rice and millet. Silkworms produced fine silk that became one of the world's most valuable products. Chinese craftsmen created delicate pottery and beautiful bronze objects. Wise teachers encouraged people to respect their parents, seek knowledge, and live peaceful lives. Their ideas influenced millions of people for thousands of years. Across Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and China, humanity was changing rapidly. People invented the wheel. They improved farming tools. They built stronger homes. Trade connected distant civilizations. Knowledge spread from one generation to another. The world was becoming larger than anyone had ever imagined. Yet humanity's greatest discoveries were still ahead. In the lands around the Mediterranean Sea, philosophers would ask questions about life, democracy, and science. Great warriors would build mighty empires. New religions would shape the hearts of billions. The story of civilization had only just begun. Ancient Greece, the Roman Empire, and the Middle Ages. As the great civilizations of Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and China flourished, another remarkable culture was beginning to rise along the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. This was ancient Greece. Unlike Egypt, Greece was not one large kingdom. It was divided into many independent city-states, including Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes. Each city had its own government, army, and traditions. Among the people of Athens lived a curious boy named Nikos. Unlike most children, Nikos loved asking questions. He often asked his father, "Why do stars shine? Why does the sea have waves? What makes people happy?" His father laughed. "You ask more questions than anyone I know." One day, Nikos met an old teacher sitting beneath an olive tree. The teacher smiled. "What do you wish to learn?" "Everything," Nikos answered. The old man nodded. The greatest journey begins with a single question. In ancient Greece, learning became one of life's greatest treasures. Instead of accepting every answer, Greek thinkers asked people to think for themselves. Great philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle encouraged people to question the world around them. They studied nature, politics, justice, mathematics, science, and medicine. Their ideas shaped education for thousands of years. Athens became famous for another important reason. Its people experimented with a new idea called democracy. Instead of one king making every decision, many citizens gathered together to vote. Although only certain citizens could participate, it was one of history's earliest experiments in self-government. The idea that ordinary people should have a voice would later influence many modern nations. Not far from Athens stood the city of Sparta. Life there was completely different. Spartans believed strength and discipline were the keys to survival. Children began military training at a very young age. Their lives were filled with exercise, courage, and strict rules. Athens became famous for knowledge. Sparta became famous for soldiers. Though different, both cities helped shape Greek civilization. As Greek culture spread, a young king from Macedonia dreamed of something greater. His name was Alexander. History remembers him as Alexander the Great. Alexander believed the world should be united. At only 20 years old, he became king. Soon he led his army across mountains, deserts, and rivers. He defeated powerful kingdoms one after another. His empire stretched from Greece to Egypt, Persia, and parts of India. Wherever Alexander traveled, he encouraged the exchange of ideas. Greek language, art, science, and architecture spread across 3 continents. Although his empire did not last long after his death, his influence remained for centuries. Knowledge traveled farther than ever before. As Greece slowly declined, another power rose to greatness. It began as a small city beside the Tiber River in Italy. Its name was Rome. At first, Rome was just another small settlement. Its people worked hard. They built roads. They farmed the land. They defended their homes. Over time, Rome became stronger. Its soldiers were disciplined. Its leaders were ambitious. Its engineers were brilliant. Soon Rome conquered neighboring lands. Then larger kingdoms. Finally, an enormous empire stretched across Europe, North Africa, and parts of Asia. The Roman Empire became one of the greatest civilizations in history. A young Roman engineer named Marcus loved building things. One day, he stood beside a construction site where hundreds of workers were building a new road. He asked his master, "Why do we spend so much time making roads?" The master smiled. "Roads connect people. They connect cities. They connect ideas. And they keep an empire together." The Romans built thousands of kilometers of roads. Many were so well built that parts of them still exist today. Merchants carried goods across the empire. Soldiers traveled quickly to defend distant lands. Messengers delivered important news. Roads connected millions of people. Rome also built magnificent bridges, aqueducts, stadiums, temples, and public baths. Aqueducts carried fresh water over long distances. Cities became cleaner and healthier. The famous Colosseum welcomed thousands of spectators who watched sporting events and public performances. Roman architects discovered new building techniques using concrete. Many modern buildings still use ideas first developed by Roman engineers. Roman law also became one of Rome's greatest achievements. Clear rules helped maintain order throughout the vast empire. Many legal systems around the world still reflect principles first developed in ancient Rome. However, no empire lasts forever. As centuries passed, Rome faced serious challenges. Corruption weakened the government. Some emperors cared only about power. Taxes became heavy. Enemies attacked the borders. Economic problems grew worse. Finally, in the year 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire collapsed. Many people feared that civilization itself would disappear. But history had another plan. After Rome's fall, Europe entered a period often called the Middle Ages. Life became more difficult. Many great cities became smaller. Trade slowed. Travel became dangerous. Powerful kings ruled castles surrounded by thick walls. Knights protected their kingdoms. Farmers worked long hours in the fields. Most people lived simple lives. Yet even during difficult times, knowledge did not disappear. Monks carefully copied books by hand. Libraries preserved ancient writings. Universities slowly began to appear. Learning continued. Meanwhile, in the Middle East and parts of Asia, a remarkable period of discovery was taking place. Great scholars translated books from Greek, Persian, and Indian civilizations. They studied mathematics, astronomy, medicine, chemistry, and engineering. Doctors developed new treatments. Astronomers mapped the stars. Mathematicians improved number systems that are still used today. Their discoveries helped preserve and expand human knowledge during a time when much of Europe struggled. Knowledge traveled from one civilization to another. Human progress never belonged to just one nation. It was always a shared journey. By the late Middle Ages, trade began to grow again. Merchants traveled farther than ever before. New inventions changed everyday life. One invention transformed history forever. The printing press. Before the printing press, books had to be copied by hand. One book could take months or even years to complete. Books were expensive. Only a few people owned them. After the printing press was invented, books could be produced much faster. Knowledge spread across Europe like never before. More people learned to read. Ideas traveled quickly. Scientists shared discoveries. Writers inspired millions. Education entered a new age. Soon artists, inventors, and scientists began asking new questions about the world. This exciting period became known as the Renaissance, meaning rebirth. Painters created masterpieces. Architects designed magnificent buildings. Scientists observed nature carefully instead of relying only on old beliefs. One brilliant artist and inventor named Leonardo da Vinci filled notebooks with ideas. He studied the human body. Designed flying machines. Created beautiful paintings. His curiosity symbolized a new age of learning. The world was changing once again. People were no longer satisfied with old answers. They wanted to explore. To discover. To understand. Little did they know that a new era was about to begin. An era of great voyages, powerful inventions, and extraordinary discoveries that would connect every continent on Earth. The age of exploration to the modern world. The Renaissance awakened a new spirit across Europe. People became curious once again. They wanted to learn. They wanted to discover. Most importantly, they wanted to explore the unknown. For centuries, traders had traveled along dangerous land routes to buy valuable goods from Asia. They brought back silk from China, spices from India, and precious gems from distant kingdoms. But these journeys were long, expensive, and often dangerous. Many explorers believed there had to be a better way. One young sailor named Marco stood at the edge of a busy harbor. Large wooden ships were preparing for another voyage. He looked toward the endless ocean. "What lies beyond the horizon?" he asked. His captain smiled. "Only those brave enough to sail will ever know." For hundreds of years, sailors had feared the open sea. They believed sea monsters lived in the deep waters. Many thought ships could fall off the edge of the world. But curiosity was stronger than fear. New inventions such as the magnetic compass, better maps, and stronger ships made long voyages possible. Explorers crossed oceans that no one in Europe had ever sailed before. They discovered new lands. They met different cultures. The world became more connected than ever before. Trade between continents increased. Ideas, foods, plants, and technologies traveled across the globe. Potatoes, tomatoes, corn, cocoa, and many other crops spread from the Americas to Europe, Africa, and Asia. Likewise, horses, wheat, and many other products reached the Americas. Human civilization entered a new global age. As trade expanded, another great transformation began. This time, it did not happen on the sea. It happened inside workshops and factories. For thousands of years, people had made products by hand. A single person could spend days making one piece of cloth or one simple tool. Then, during the late 18th century, inventors created powerful machines. Steam engines changed everything. Factories appeared across Britain and later throughout Europe and North America. One young factory worker named Thomas watched a giant steam engine for the first time. Its wheels turned without stopping. Its pistons moved up and down like the heartbeat of a giant machine. Thomas whispered, "This machine can do the work of hundreds of people." His supervisor nodded. "It is changing the world." And it truly did. Factories produced goods faster than ever before. Clothing became cheaper. Railways connected distant cities. Steamships crossed oceans in weeks instead of months. The Industrial Revolution transformed everyday life. Millions of people left farms and moved into growing cities. New jobs appeared. New inventions followed. The telegraph allowed messages to travel across countries within minutes. The telephone allowed people to hear voices from far away. Soon electricity lit homes, schools, hospitals, and factories. Dark nights became bright. Cities never truly slept again. The 19th century became an age of invention. Scientists searched for answers. Doctors discovered new medicines. Engineers built stronger bridges and taller buildings. Inventors created bicycles, automobiles, and airplanes. One invention amazed the world. The airplane. For thousands of years, humans had dreamed of flying like birds. Many believed it was impossible. Then, in 1903, two brothers proved that dream could become reality. Their first flight lasted only a short time. But it changed history forever. Within a few decades, airplanes connected continents. People could travel around the world in days instead of months. The impossible had become possible. Yet human progress also brought terrible conflicts. In 1914, the world entered one of its darkest chapters. The First World War began. Countries formed powerful alliances. Millions of soldiers marched into battle believing the war would end quickly. They were wrong. The fighting lasted for years. New weapons caused unimaginable destruction. Entire towns disappeared. Families lost fathers, sons, brothers, and friends. When the war finally ended in 1918, millions of lives had been lost. People hoped such a tragedy would never happen again. Unfortunately, history repeated itself. Only 21 years later, another conflict erupted. The Second World War became even larger and more destructive. Nations across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific became battlefields. Cities were destroyed. Millions of innocent civilians suffered. The world witnessed terrible crimes and great acts of courage. Finally, in 1945, the war came to an end. The cost was enormous. More than 60 million people had lost their lives. Humanity learned a painful lesson. Peace is precious. It must never be taken for granted. After the war, nations worked together to rebuild. New organizations were created to encourage cooperation and reduce the risk of future conflicts. Scientists returned their attention to discovery instead of destruction. Then another great competition began. This time, it was not fought on land. It was fought in space. The space age had arrived. In 1957, the first artificial satellite entered orbit around Earth. People looked into the night sky with wonder. Just 12 years later, the impossible happened once again. Human beings landed on the moon. Millions of people watched on television. An astronaut stepped onto the gray surface and left footprints that remain there today. The dream of countless generations had become reality. The same species that once feared lions on the African grasslands had reached another world. The late 20th century brought another revolution. The digital revolution. Computers became smaller, faster, and more powerful. The internet connected billions of people across the globe. A message could travel from one side of the earth to the other in seconds. Students could learn from teachers thousands of kilometers away. Doctors shared medical knowledge instantly. Families spoke face-to-face despite living on different continents. Knowledge that once filled enormous libraries now fit inside a small smartphone. The world became a global village. Today, humanity stands at the beginning of another remarkable age, artificial intelligence. Machines can now recognize voices, translate languages, help doctors detect diseases, assist scientists with complex research, support students as they learn new skills. Yet every new invention brings important questions. How should we use technology wisely? How can we protect our planet? How can we ensure that progress benefits everyone? The future will depend not only on our intelligence but also on our kindness, responsibility, and cooperation. As we look back across thousands of years, one truth becomes clear. Human civilization was never built by one person. It was built by millions. By hunters who learned to work together. By farmers who planted the first seeds. By builders who raised pyramids. By philosophers who asked difficult questions. By scientists who searched for answers. By explorers who crossed unknown oceans. By inventors who imagined impossible machines. By doctors who saved lives. By teachers who shared knowledge. And by ordinary people who believed tomorrow could be better than today. From a small campfire in ancient Africa. To villages beside mighty rivers. To magnificent civilizations. To great empires. To factories. To airplanes. To the moon. And now to the age of artificial intelligence. The journey of humanity has been extraordinary. But our story is not finished. Every child born today becomes part of the next chapter. Perhaps one of them will discover a cure for a deadly disease. Perhaps another will build cities on Mars. Perhaps someone watching this very video will create an invention that changes the world forever. History is not only about the past. History is also about the future. And the future is written by the choices we make today. So remember this. Every great civilization began with a single idea. Every great invention started with one curious mind. Every great journey began with one brave step. What will your step be?